Everybody, and welcome back to my custom position What's Your Decision. Um, this is going to be a theory update video, so if you haven't seen the previous videos, I recommend you watch them first. They're in a playlist on my channel. But in this video, I want to go over a couple of updates that have been found out in the What's Your Decision theory over the past year. So this video will focus on a couple lines which were playable 1 year ago, but now they are either probably losing or just not as good as last year. So last year when I analyzed the positions last, the current engine was Torch 2. So Stockfish 17 and 18, so the latest versions of Stockfish, they don't evaluate custom positions properly, especially those with more pieces starting the game than a standard chess game. So therefore I've been using Torch. So last year I used Torch 2, now Torch 4 is out, and based on that there have been a couple of updates to the theory. So the first thing I want to go through is the 1e4, which is one of the main moves. So in this position the main line, and it was also the main line last year, was like c5, f4, 96, knight d3, and d6 was the main line. And that has not changed, that's still the main line, but one of the other lines that was playable was e4 d5, and it's through this video that probably, or is it this year that's found out that this move is probably losing for black, although it's complicated and it's not an easy loss. So let's just go forward into the theory to see what the new things that have been found out are. So f4 is played, d takes c4 is a bit inaccurate as it allows white to develop. This was all known last year. Knight e6 is the best move. Knight d3 is played, and once again c5 is inaccurate. White can take. After knight d4, bishop g4, a few moves later white will be taking on b4. So if black can't play c5 because they're going to lose this d5 pawn, then, and if they can't play c5, then they can't develop the bishop to b5, which is probably the most preferable square, and they can't develop the bishop and the knight. So what black does then is black plays d4, and that's going to allow them to play c5 next move. And so last year the main line of the opening, well actually before that, this move wasn't seen. Bishop g4 was the main move, but then last year came a very interesting idea, came up, bishop f3, which the idea for this move was that after the move c5 and black would like to put their bishop on b5, white instead is going to play e5, and what e5 does is, well, it prepares to respond to bishop b5 with just taking on b7, and if black wants to prevent that, they could play c6, but then the bishop can never go to b5. So that was a very interesting line that was found last year. But what the line that's winning, and that's been found out recently in 2026, for white over here, and you'll see that Torch 4 is actually finding this idea. Torch 2 did not. So the only way I would know that move would be to kind of figure it out myself, which I hadn't figured that out myself because I thought that well, black has a defense over the c3 pawn, but okay, knight takes b4 is the move, and it's actually winning. So it seems like the engine is now saying black is better, but it will soon realize the strength of this move. So king takes, bishop g4, c5, f3. So after f3, there are a few more there are a few responses black can have. All of them lose. So maybe the most natural move is c6, just continuing the development. Bishop b5 is not preferred as a move because after bishop b5, white has rook fd1, and they are eventually going to breakthrough. So after rook cd8, we have c6, knight f2, and after knight f2, let's go here. Let's go knight a c7. After knight a c7 in this position, the knight wants to go to d5, but we're going to play knight e4. So the engine seems to not realize it's okay. Knight e4 is played, and we should just be setting up to sacrifice on c3, which is why bishop e5 is not the best move. And you're kind of seeing when we're live doing these videos, just we might be considering a few different moves. So, but yeah, perhaps now we bring this rook to d1, rook cd1. And yeah, just showing that white is completely winning, because after a move like knight d5, yes, there's this thematic move, and it just gets stronger now that white sacrificed on b4 already. And yeah, and we've seen this kind of idea before. So it just took a few minutes for the engine to realize this move. But going back, so bishop b5. It's not. I didn't even have that in my moves. So let's go over a couple of moves. So the first one is c6. The first move that I analyzed is c6, and this move is inaccurate. Let me just show the main line. So the next move is going to be knight f2. After knight f2, knight a c7, knight d1. So white is going straight for the c3 pawn. So black has a couple of moves. So rook d8 could be played, just trying to protect this this d4 pawn, because white might want to eventually take on e6, and if c takes, they might like have some sacrifice on d4. But bishop f2, b5 can be played. But now the knight's just going to take on c3, and bishop e1, and white is going to win this c3 pawn and free their pieces. And once the engine realizes how strong this is, yeah, white is just better. But if we go all the way back, black can play knight a c7. Now they're knight a c7. I don't know. This menu is not going away. So just a little bit of technical issues. Hopefully this one goes away. Oh, finally. Okay. After NAC7, knight d1 is played. And after knight d1, we have, so white is looking at the c3 pawn. So again, rook d8, and then this leads to the sacrifice. But if we have knight b5, which is the other move, then White will play e5. After bishop d7, they'll play bishop f2. Um, so rook f e8. I think either rook to e8. So rook f e8 just centralizing the rook. B e1. So white brings the bishop to e1. Rook c8, and then white just takes on c3. So the control over this c3 pawn is too weak. And after these moves, rook f d1 is played. The rook goes to d3, and white is going to undermine the protection, the pawn protection over here, and they've freed their, or sorry, they're going to undermine the protection of the black's king, and they've already freed their pieces. If we go all the way back over here, so c6 now we see is kind of lost because white is just going to go for the c3 pawn. So going back over here, the other thing that black can do is they can try to move their king out of the way. If they move the king out of the way, they can bring the pawn to b5, b4, and reinforce the protection of the c3 pawn. And if they had two moves, they could play those moves right now and be better because white would basically have sacrificed a piece for nothing. But white brings the rook to d1, and after b5, we see this idea has also been popularized. Well, it's been popularized before the last year, but before that, it was kind of an uncommon idea for one side to voluntarily free the opponent's pieces. But in this position, white's going to play bishop takes e6. After f takes e6, rook takes e4, pawn takes b4 check is nice because we don't want to just take on d4 and then allow them to play b4. I mean, we would still take on c3, but we just play this pawn to b4 check, which prevents black from getting any sort of defense. Black can play king a4, and then bishop takes d4, e5, and e5 is played by black so that white doesn't get this pawn on e5, which would really protect this f6 pawn. Instead of taking on c3, white actually goes to c5 because the queen can take on c3 anyways. It also attacks the rook. So bishop ef7, queen takes c3. And we're seeing in this position, white has voluntarily freed black's pieces, but black's pieces are kind of still stuck in the corner. White has a very strong pawn over here on f6, and the king is also very strong here. It's very safe on h4, whereas black's king on a4 is very weak. And that is why white is better in this position. So once white's taken on c3, b6 is played. Bishop takes f8, rook takes f8, queen d2, a5, black is just trying to get out of the position, c3, white protects that b4 pawn, and the reason why a few moves ago white played king a4 when they could have taken the b4 pawn was because then black could take on c3 with check. So black was just trying to gain a trying to not lose one tempo here. But now white is threatening to play bishop c2 check and win a bishop over here. So black will take here, and then they will take on a2. So white is able to win that piece. Black is still up one piece of material, but they're almost getting checkmated. So what black has to do is they kind of have to trade white's pieces. So queen g8 is the only holding move. White's not going to trade. They'll go queen c2 check. Black brings in the queen for defense, and then the only move over here which wins for white is this move, nice move, queen c6, which completely freezes the knight on a8 and also the bishop on b8. And black does have this one scary pawn, but white should be better, as white also has pawns for trying to get promoted. They also are even in material, and black's king is a lot weaker than white's. So this move is just this king a5 move for black just doesn't work. One more thing black can try. So we saw that c6 was too slow. We saw that moving the king out of the way to a5 was too slow. We saw that bishop b5 is not adequate to defend. So the other thing is that white can play king b5. This is another king move that tries to get the king out of the way, but you'll notice that when the king goes to b5, um, there's no way the pawn can go b5 and then b4. So when the king goes to b5, it's actually just trying to escape out of the whole situation to c6. So rook fd1. There's another move, knight f2. Oh yeah, knight f2, the king moves to c6. Now knight d3 is played, and the king goes back to b5. It's kind of funny, but the reason why black does that is because if black didn't go to c6, then white, instead of going to d3, white would go to d1 and just take on c3. Um, and a few more moves can be played. So white plays b4, black takes, you can take on e6, and then have this thing which are called the dual untrapping strategy, where white should, in a lot of cases, be better. The king tries to hide, but the king is still not very safe, and although black is up, um, they're up actually two pieces for a few pawns. They're completely not active, and white has the attack, but this is probably still losing, but it's still a decent chance for black, which is why the main move going back here, instead of knight f2, it's rook fd1. And you'll see here, so this whole e4 d5, which is the first two moves of the game, like, yeah, it could be probably winning for white, but it's still very complicated, so I would actually still say it's probably playable for black. So after rook fd1, which the engine right now doesn't seem to like, but it'll soon like more. So a5, black's just trying to hide the king. Bishop takes d4 is played. So here we don't even take on e6 first, and the reason we don't do that is because we can just take on d4 here. And now if black were to take, first of all, white can just take on c3 and threat on. If black were to take on d4, white can take on c3 and threaten a checkmate on c4, but not only that, the bishop also aims at c8, so white can just do that sacrifice. Black plays c5 to get their king away. The rook just goes back. King a6, queen c3, b5. And you'll see in this position, and that's why I think that probably king b5 would be black's best chance at not losing this. And you'll see the engine right now is not even saying that white is significantly better, but given if the engine spends a little bit more time to think, it will evaluate white's position a little bit more favorably here than it does right now. That's just simply because black isn't up enough material to counteract white's freed pieces, and their king on a6 is still not so safe. So the other thing is, when I analyze this position, I in this analysis you can put like the number of threads. So I have one here. When it's more threads, it's more accurate, but so this one's only one, just to make it a little bit faster to analyze, just for the sake of the video. But this yeah, this king b5 move should be black's best chance over here, but it should be winning for white, probably with best play, but it's not super clear. But in any case, black still has the main line, which it still holds up very well, which is to play this d6 d6 here. So that's kind of just an update I wanted to do on the e4 d5 line, where white is probably winning with best play, but it's still difficult with that new move knight takes b4. And then the other thing I just want to show in this video quickly is that a year ago, here we go. A year ago, when I last made some theory videos on this position, the move 1e3 was revived with the following line. e4, c5, f4, f3, bishop g4, bishop b5, and then bishop takes e6. And I said that when I analyzed this last year, my conclusion was that if we follow a few more moves, white gets a strong position around their king, and black kind of doesn't really have any plans, so white can kind of just play this position, and they have to be very careful, but it's a legitimate way to play this position, and black kind of doesn't really have many opportunities here in this position. And while I still think this could be true in a line like this, where black doesn't have too many opportunities, it seems like nowadays torch 4, which is a little bit stronger. I mean, right now it's showing that valuation zeros, but when I analyzed it a little bit more, it was showing that black is slightly better. And I think in any case in this position, it would be very difficult for white to actually break through. So it seems like in this position, at the most, black could kind of hope for a draw. But now that I analyze it more, it does. When I'm bringing this analysis, though, it's with only one thread here. When I was having 2 threads, it was showing black a little bit better. But I haven't had any new lines in this position. It's more just that torch 4 doesn't seem to be as liking of this position as torch 2. And perhaps some of the moves here which I made using torch 2 were not the most accurate, but see, now it's saying like f3, but for black, I mean, white has to be quite careful when playing a position like this, and I think they're better options. But e3 could still be played. It's just a little bit less, a little bit less in style here. Because I definitely think that with the amount of pieces that black has, so many pieces, it can be hard to push through in any way here. But yeah, this is just all for the theory update for those 2 lines, the e4 and this one e3 line. There'll be a couple more videos on some more things that are being found out with the theory, but as of now, that's for this specific e4 d5 line and the e3. That's it for now.